Hi, everybody. It's great to see you all. But before we get started tonight, we wanted to take just a moment to acknowledge the really tragic killing today of a 37-year-old woman in Minneapolis by an ICE agent. She was in her car and shot. And right after that, our government put a spin on it that was really like Soviet style gaslighting and just is further aggravating. So we just wanted to take a moment of silence and acknowledgement of her. Okay. And then but we do want to move on. And I hope everybody had a great holiday and that you're ready to get to work on the midterms because they're going to be here before we know it. And I just wanted to welcome everybody old and new. We have people who've been joining our group weekly or more for a year or 5 years since we've been on Zoom, or even starting 9 years ago in our living room. And I think there may be a lot of new people on tonight. I haven't had a chance to scan it yet, but for those people who are new, we always start and end our meetings with a music video. We try and keep the meeting succinct and to the point. I would say if you have questions or comments, you can put them in chat. And if at the end or at any point you'd like to be on our mailing list, you can put your name and email in chat. And tonight, most of our meetings are more meetings. Just, it's nice if you can put your video on too, because we all like to just see each other and know that we're part of this larger community. And so the video helps with that. And most of our meetings are just more discussions, but we obviously have fundraisers at times. Tonight is not a fundraiser, but it is about either supporting Friday Action's donation strategy, which Paul will talk about, or more importantly, if you're donating elsewhere to a candidate or organization or considering a particular candidate or organization, this is going to be a good summary of sort of do's and don'ts of where to donate. So I think that's my part, and I'm turning it over to Michael.
Hello, every Action land. Thank you for joining us. I'm having a little bit of internet connectivity issues, so I hope I don't drop out, but let me go for it. About why I'm here and why this strategy makes some sense and why I recommend we follow Paul. And here's what I'm thinking. I follow politics like everybody here, but I don't follow politics enough to have any idea what work in air quotes candidates elected these days. I know enough to know that things have changed over the many decades that I and many of us have been alive, and they continue to change. There was a time when, with enough money and enough 30-second ads on TV, your candidate, if they were the one with the money and the 30-second ads, would win. It's a new era, and Paul has kept up landscape. He sometimes modestly calls himself a savant when it comes to politics and political thinking and which candidates and which districts have the money or have the message or have the a chance. But calling himself a savant jokingly is doesn't take into account the hours and hours and hours of hard work he puts in studying, keeping aware of what's going on in politics every day, in addition to his innate aptitude on this subject. He does a deep dive and he has guides his recommendations that he shares with us all. And Paul knows which candidate has a chance and where to contribute money that will actually be effective and does the most good. And he also knows whether to give to the candidate, the party, the county, the grassroots organization. And so I just, speaking for myself, and I recommend for all of you, we ask Paul where to give, and he does certainly do. And more importantly, not to be negative, but he keeps me from throwing my donations away on something that emotionally would feel great if we could, defeat one of the terrible people in our Congress at the moment, but the candidate running against that person has no earthly chance. So that's why I'm here, and I imagine enough of you are here for similar reasons. And thanks for listening. And back to our friend Paul.
Thanks, Michael. Actually, Michael kept cutting out twice. I said I'm an idiot savant. I didn't say I'm a savant. So some of this knowledge is not useful in many ways. It's like being good at trivia or something, but thank you. Okay, I am going to do a couple of little technical things for a moment. Thanks for bearing with me. Good. So before I get on to the presentation, which will be a little more formal than you guys are used to, some of you saw the dress rehearsal a few months ago. Thanks for all of your input on that. But I just want to start off by saying, and especially today, some things, I don't know, the Venezuela thing certainly made me upset. It's terrible. A lot of people died. But for some reason, some things just knock me off my feet again, whereas most of the time it's just like another piece of craziness. The murder today, and it was a murder, of that young woman, 37-year-old woman in her car, and then the gaslighting afterwards, like 10 minutes later, for those of you who didn't watch it, suddenly Kristi Noem got on in Texas and said, there was a riot in the street, they were rioting. If you haven't watched it, watch it, what she says. They were rioting in the street, and she mowed down a bunch of our people, and they're injured. None of it happened. Watch it in your own eyes. It's just interesting that it's right at January 6th. So gaslighting on a level that even for them is at a new level, and just who this person was, the innocence of her, the fact that she has a 6-year-old child, and if it just really got me. And so we have to win the midterms. It's like anything else I'm saying. I'm going to use this. We have, just like the mayor of Minnesota, I think it was the right response. His response was to say, ICE, get the fuck out of Minneapolis. This is a different time. This is not about just winning a normal election. We must win the midterms. We must win the midterms. In recent election cycles, since 2016, we have actually had a slight financial edge. And that's what I'm going to talk about tonight, because this is an area where we can help. So since 2016, we have had a slight financial edge on the Republicans, believe it or not, in almost every cycle. That is not going to be true in 2026. Elon Musk alone, who is talking about supporting the Republicans, if he gives 0.5% of his income, which he might do, because remember, he gave Trump $250 million. If he gives 0.5% of his wealth, that will be $1.5 billion. Okay, that's the bad news. They've got tons of money. They haven't had that kind of money. The good news is we do not, especially in this new era of politics, as Michael talked about, where yes, television ads are important and they're extraordinarily expensive. We do not have to match them dollar for dollar. What we have to do is make sure that our candidates are funded just enough to compete. And in that case, we will win, and we will win the House. Okay? So that's what we need to do. And in order to do that, we must be strategic. We've got to be smart and strategic. We can't be emotional, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So Michael's going to, if you will, Michael, if you could put up the, if Michael's still with us. Oh, good, he's still with us. If you will put up that beginning of the slideshow here, and let me just make sure I am on. Okay, I'm still on that. Before we do that, Kristi is going to just tell you, and the reason is many of you asked after the dress rehearsal, said, is it possible for us to both see you, Paul, and to see the PowerPoint at the same time. It is possible. Don't freak out about it. We're going to describe to you how to do that. If you are on a computer, we're going to describe how to do that. And Jane is also going to put it in chat. But Christy, could you let us know, how can people see it so it's a side-by-side screen? One side will be the PowerPoint, the other side will be me.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Great to see so many of you here tonight. It's awesome. And so to view this, so you can actually see Paul and see the slides. If you're on a computer, it's easy enough to do. You can so you can see this him on one side and Paul on the other, and the slides. You're going to look at the top right hand corner of your screen. You're going to click on where it says View, and then you're going to choose a side-by-side view of it. If you can't figure that out, and on a phone or a tablet, now I used to teach computer training, so this is so feels so normal for me to tell you guys this. But if you can't view it on a tablet, which was for me, I couldn't on my iPad. It's either because you're on a phone or a tablet. On my iPad, I can pick multi-speaker view, and I can see him and the slides. So we won't get into too much of the technical abilities, but up on that right-hand side is where you can either choose side-by-side view, or if you're on another a tablet or an iPad, you can choose multi-speaker view.
Okay.
And it's time for
Great.
turn it back to Paul.
Great. And it's also in chat. And just don't worry about it. If you don't do it, don't spend much time on it. It was just to give you that option. Great. So here we go. So the first question to ask, if you're going to give to a candidate, we all get all these things, and I don't know how many you get a day, but I get dozens, whether they're emails or they're texts or occasionally a phone call. Does the candidate have a realistic path to victory? Will more funding change the equation? Sometimes it won't. And will the money actually be used effectively? Those are the key questions that we need to start with when we're asking this. And one of the other questions would be, does the candidate have a fantastic chance of winning so they don't even need your money? They won the last time with 72% of the vote. That's the other people, it's not in this chart, but that's the other people who are constantly reaching out for money. It's like, why do I need to give to you? You're going to win easily. Okay, so you need to really ask yourself all of those questions. Next slide, Michael. Okay, so let's go with the first one. Is there a realistic chance of victory? So, there are just a lot of candidates who don't. And one of the things that really has driven me crazy since the 2020 election, the 2022 election, and 2024 is that Democrats, and we are now the highly educated party, that if you have a college degree, if you have a postdoc, if you have a PhD, your chances of being a Democrat are pretty darn good in these days. That has changed since about 2012 or so. And we're supposed to be smart, but we have not spent our money wisely. If you take all the money in, I believe it was 2020 when Jamie Harrison won, someone correct me on that, maybe it was 2022. But these races, we raised well over $250 million, $250 million, not million, billion, on candidates who had absolutely no chance of winning. And that's the conservative estimate. So for example, Jamie Harrison raised $132 million and lost to Lindsey Graham by over 10%. He lost, but you know what that money got for him? Maybe he picked up 1 or 2%, but we all hated Lindsey Graham, right? I wanted Lindsey Graham to lose, but he had no chance of winning. Amy McGrath running against Mitch McConnell. Remember when Mitch McConnell was the worst of the worst? Now he's just kind of the worst. But Mitch McConnell in that race won by 20 percentage points. Amy McGrath raised $100 million. These are amounts that you can't even spend these amounts. Kind of like Marcus Flowers in Georgia running against our new savior, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's still a lunatic, by the way. But Marcus Flowers in a congressional race raised $16 million and lost by 31%. Okay. Anybody in the field who's watched this would have told you Jamie Harrison, Amy McGrath, Marcus Flowers, and there were others, had zero chance of winning. So how did they raise so much money? I understand it. We really dislike these other candidates. I so want them to lose. And they've gotten really good at sending you a text message where they tell you in the latest poll, I'm just 2% down. Yeah, well, anyway, not true. So next slide. So no realistic chance for victory. We need to know they can win. Michael, let's go on. Okay. There's also the question, is more funding going to change the equation at all? Is it going to really give them a better chance of winning? You know, Gideon running against Collins in Maine in 2020. There's an example of a race that I believe our candidate, our Democratic candidate, really great candidate, I wish she had won, of course, but she raised probably 3 times as much as what any professional would have said, this is what you need to compete in the state of Maine. So when she lost by about 7 or 8%, but that was a competitive race, it made sense to give her money, but not that much money. You can't spend that much money in the state of Maine, right? So what happens is she loses and she's left with millions of dollars in the bank. So the other times, so not just one case where already have enough money, and that's going to certainly be true this year, tying back into what I said at the beginning, which is we need to be really smart. We need to get these candidates the amount they need, but not huge amounts, because we are going to be the underdog in terms of fundraising. Some races have many other ways where they're going to get money. They have a lot of union support, or they're an extremely wealthy candidate or some other organization. So for example, a self-funding candidate, if somebody has $1 billion, spend your own money to run the race. I disagree with that. We should have laws about it, but right now that's the game. We don't need to contribute to you. You contribute to yourself, okay? You've got $1 billion, spend 2 or 3% of your money and use that. Finally, sometimes the candidate or organization has no practical way to use the donations. Okay, this is one of my favorite stories. You've heard it before. This is the Pennsylvania Supreme Court race that just happened in November. The night before the election, so that was Monday night, the election was on Tuesday, I get 2 or 3 texts and an email from the group organizing to win for us the Supreme Court seats in the state of Pennsylvania. That was a Monday night. It was 12 hours before the polls were going to open on election day. How were they going to use that money that we are raising at that late date? Now, candidates can use it 3 or 4 days before. I'm not saying not to do that, not the best time to raise money, but there's no way that this organization was going to use my donation 12 hours before that election to make any difference in the election itself. So the candidate has the money they need, they have access to it in other ways, or they can't really use it. It's too late or for other reasons. Next slide. So this whole thing about how do you evaluate whether an organization or a campaign structure uses the money effectively. That's where kind of Michael was talking, that partially because of my organizational background, that I'm kind of interested in that stuff. I read about it. It's kind of boring for most of you. I kind of find it fascinating that some candidates have really great organizations, others have terrible organizations. They really make a difference. One of the things that makes a difference, especially in the last couple of election cycles, is how skilled are they using social media or other free media when they're in the campaign style. So Mamdani was phenomenal at using that. Donald Trump, unfortunately, has been really good at using that, of using free media or very inexpensive media. So many candidates, more so on the Democratic side, unfortunately right now, are kind of behind the curve, and they're still relying on using most of their funds, because they're so expensive, on TV ads, and they don't move the needle. Remember, we're talking about such a small margin of maybe 5, 7, 10% of the vote you're trying to influence, and you're spending all this money on that small percent on TV ads. Really doesn't make the same kind of sense, doesn't have the same effectiveness it did even 8 or 10 years ago. Secondly, what's their base of volunteers like, right? Whom can they use effectively? We saw this If you go back to, say, Obama in 2008, he had such an incredibly good organization, and partially because he had an enormous network of enthusiastic volunteers. Very important to say what's behind them, besides perhaps, I don't know, they've been a head of a corporation or they have a name in some other way. Do they have the enthusiasm of a base? Because we're going to have to be very selective here about which candidates we back. And those candidates must have a kind of enthusiastic base of volunteers who are behind them. Finally, is their paid staff well organized? Are they efficient? In other words, are they spending a lot of money, which some campaigns can do, on consultants who are getting a percent of the TV ads that the campaign spends on? I kid you not. So the way a lot of political consultants on campaigns work is they tell you what kind of ads to do. They even can be making the ads. They book the ads because they know exactly where it should go on. And they get a certain percentage of the ad buys that you do. That may not be the best use of money anymore. And who do they have with them? Do they have a really good campaign manager, effective people? That's the kind of data you can get when you go into the weeds and you read some of the kind of political stuff that's out there, not in mainstream, but on places like Larry Sabato or Charlie Cook's report, which are things that I'm just interested in it. So I read that stuff and I see that this organization does not look very good. This one looks really great. Okay, next slide. So this slide, why do all of us, and I say we because I'm the same way. I acknowledge this. I mean, this is as scary a time I can remember in terms of our government. It really feels like we're fighting the American Revolution again. I'm watching it on TV, and we're the Americans, and these guys are kind of like the British. They certainly don't believe in democracy. Trump is certainly nowhere near as good as King George was. Jesus, I'll take King George any day over Donald Trump. But it feels terrifying. But why then would I hesitate to give? Well, there are a lot of reasons I have, and I know a lot of people I talk to have. One is there are so many organizations that you know about, I know about, local organizations, national organizations, some that have always been there and some that have been just devastated under the Trump administration. And your heart can break and say, I need to give to them, these other worthy causes. I hear you. The problem with that is if we don't win back the House, if they put through another bill like the big, beautiful, horrible, ugly bill that was passed, that's going to affect the vast majority of all of those things that we support. So we can spend as much money as we want on the local, food shelter, food pantry, and yet it'll be devastated if they win again and continue the kind of cuts and the way and the cruelty with which they have done with the social net or with other issues like abortion or voting rights or you name it. And so if we're going to really do something, the reason I would give you is not that these other causes aren't more direct and more worthy and more immediate, but that really we need to be thinking about a bigger picture, or we will just be giving again and again and again to try and save the sinking ships here. Okay. The other reason is I hate the money that's central to elections. I hated the decision by the Supreme Court in 2010, Citizens United. One of the worst decisions the Supreme Court has ever made, right? It really destroyed our electoral system. It's made money central. It's made money in politics, kind of like all the laws, almost unenforceable. I assume the Supreme Court, when they hear their case, which comes up soon, that even the few things we still have, even the few laws that are still in place, will all be done away with by the Supreme Court, probably sometime in the next 6 months. So you go, what the heck? Well, this is the game we're in. We can hate the system we're in and continue to work to change it. And it is awful, but it doesn't do any good for us to just say, well, I'm not playing by those rules, because those are the rules right now. And we're going to need to spend money if we want to change those rules. Finally, I question that my donation makes any difference, both to who will win or to the election in general. I hear you, and yet I could also say to myself, and I do say to myself and to all of you, we don't know that anything we do right now politically makes any difference. I think it does. Having 7 million of us at the No Kings rally last time, did that make a difference? I think it did, but we don't know it did. We just don't know. All the postcards, all the phone calling, even our discussions with our friends politically, even trying to keep somewhat up to date to understand what's going on so we can talk intelligently with people to maybe convince them. Any of that worthwhile? I don't know. So I can't answer the question of whether the donation will make any difference. It's too existential. It's like, does any of it make any difference? I think it does, but it applies to everything. If you just want to say, why am I even here tonight listening to this? Does this make any difference? I can't answer that question for you. I just know one thing. If we don't do something, we absolutely cannot make a difference. Next slide. So why do we have a strategic plan here? What's our action plan? And why some of you I see definitely are new. You've put your names in chat. I saw very quickly, and we have a pretty good 173 people. So this is a larger than normal meeting. So I'm assuming some of you are new. And some of the questions for you would be, why join with us? And I'm not here tonight in any way to say this is where you should join in. I'd love you to, but there are lots of other places. Basically trying to say, just make sure you think strategically about where you give, whether it's to an organization or a candidate. One of the reasons, if you want to join us, again, tonight is not a fundraiser. If you want to join us, and I will discuss what are we doing down the road in very practical terms to raise money and who we're raising it for. I will come to that. But why join us at all or come back? Well, one is kind of like what Michael was talking about. What we're trying to do here is cut through all the noise. The noise being, think about in the last week, how many texts or emails you have gotten asking for money from campaigns or organizations, right? And so part of it is just trying to say, look, I don't need to look at any of these anymore. I'm not going to consider any of them. I can't tell you how many times I get emails or calls or texts from friends or people in Friday Action saying, I just got this email about this candidate. Should I give to them? I'm going to tell you right now, don't give to anybody. If you want to come here, we're going to tell you exactly who to give to. That will take care of that. Don't worry about everybody else. Just don't do it. I would say don't do it. That's your safest bet. And what we'll do is cut through the noise and we'll tell you where to give because we'll advise you as best as we know to give where it counts. So you'll cut through the noise. You won't have to worry about all those other people asking you anything. You've done you're gonna do your bit. Okay? You do your bit, you'll know you're giving as best you can to where the money counts. And finally, the reason Friday Action has worked to raise millions of dollars, send millions of postcards, make hundreds of thousands of phone calls. The reason it has functioned so well is because we do projects, all of us, all together, one project at a time. Very simple model from organizational theory, that's the way you really build enthusiasm. We're doing one event at a time. We're doing it together. So I could sit there and say, okay, maybe I will write a check for X amount to this candidate. And you can feel good for a minute. You've sent it off. It's fine. But it feels a lot better when you suddenly realize 30 people are doing it. 50 people are doing it. We have 174 people. That's how Friday Action has functioned, so that when we set a goal and we have somebody come on and we say, we know we can raise $20,000 for you in 20 minutes and we raise $40,000, it's because we're doing it all together. And I think there is something, no matter what you're doing, there is the harnessing of collective power that is so important. So that's the other thing we offer is we are doing this all together. We set goals together. We're all going to see that after we raise $75,000 for Simon Rosenberg's group in our fundraiser at the end of March, when we raise $50,000 or more for the States Project in our fundraiser in May. We're all doing that together, and it will feel really good, and everybody then gives more. That's the other reason. Next slide. So here's what we are doing at Friday Action. So I've told you, kind of the general stuff. Now we're just this is Friday Action stuff. Really, that beginning was why I had people invite friends and family, is just to educate. Right now, my main goal is to educate everybody in the Democratic Party so that we do not waste the $250 million, $500 million. We can't do that in 2026. It actually was fine earlier. We had the money to waste because we had more money than them. We cannot do that again. And that's why I'm glad so many of you are here. I'm glad you can tell your family and friends what you learned here tonight. That's the most important thing. But secondarily, here's what we're doing. So on March 25th, Simon Rosenberg will be on with us, and he will be kind of our headliner or star. He will be on for about a half hour, and he has something called Winning the House. That's through Hopium, through his website. Many of you follow him. And I like what he does. He is really good at choosing candidates, really knows. So he has four House candidates that he is focusing on raising money for through Hopium. What's interesting is his organization, which has hundreds of thousands of people on his newsletter, hundreds of thousands. Their goal is to raise $50,000. I wrote to Simon Rosenberg, sent him an email, and I said, we'd like to give you $50,000 towards winning the House. It was very hard to get hold of Simon Rosenberg way back. Never got, right? But you know what? I got an email back from him within 15 minutes because I said, if you're willing to come on, I will promise you $50,000. I'll talk more about that in a second. But that's Simon Rosenberg. He will be on with us. We're gonna help Simon Rosenberg because not only our collective energy, but when we suddenly, with Simon Rosenberg, help him to make that goal in one evening, I'm telling you, our energy has boosted so many other groups, and I'm certain Simon Rosenberg will go, oh my God, and suddenly his group, I bet you, raises a lot more money because of our energy as well. On May 29th, the States Project, our great friends, magnificent organization, will be on, and our headliner for that will be Jessica Craven. Jessica Craven, many of you know, some of you don't know, she does a great blog post almost daily called Chop Wood, Carry Water. She'll be fantastic, and they will be on May 29th. After that, I hope we will do 3 more fundraisers, but I definitely believe we will do 1 more, and that'll be on July 1st. So that's our calendar of upcoming events, and we'll take the next slide. I think we just have 2 more slides, or maybe just 1 more. What can you do right now? Okay, great. So there are a couple of things if you want to help us directly right now. Here's what we need. The reason I could write Simon Rosenberg is because a group of people stepped up who had the wherewithal, the luck, many of us don't have that, but some of us do, to become one of the founding donors. The only reason this project could take off was because I was able to attract enough founding donors to donate $10,000 apiece so I could write Simon Rosenberg. It's not a legal document, but I could say to him, because I don't want to say this to him if it's not going to be true, if we only raise $2,000 and he comes on, I was able to say, I can pretty much guarantee you we will raise a minimum of $50,000 for you. That's what I'm saying when these different groups are coming on. In order to do that, we need a few more of these $10,000 donors. My goal was to have 15. We're close, but I need a few more. If you have somebody, if you know somebody who might be interested, they can call me, get in touch with me directly, put that in chat. I can talk to you about it. We can even have a meeting again for potential large donors. If you would like to be a sponsor or host for one of the next 2 events, let me know, put that in chat. I've already had a few people. That's what we do for all of our events. You become a sponsor, host. We usually use your name unless you want to remain anonymous. So those are $1,000 or $500 donations for that. And finally, if you have a connection to be to know somebody who could be a headliner, that's how we're going to attract a larger audience those evenings. So you can send the invitation to your friends, hey, Simon Rosenberg's going to be on, or Al Franken might be on, or we're looking at Heather Cox Richardson, or trying to get any number of people who might draw an even bigger crowd come on and donate more. So folks, I think that's the end of the presentation, what you guys can do. Let's see, Michael, do we have another slide, or are we at the end? We are at the end. Oh, so good. Great. If you have any questions, we're not going to take them through the hands. There's just too many of us. We have 170 of us on. Would you put your questions in chat? They can be very direct about, the presentation, or more general ones, in which case I might not answer them tonight, but I will get back to you on that. So I'm going to let Jane and Christy and Michael, who I don't see on my front screen, but that's okay. If you guys can just screen any questions and relay them to me. Somebody just sent me one. I'm unmuting you guys, which is, I did just do a meeting. They asked about the Senate. I just did a meeting about the Senate. I might do that again sometime in January. So I'll just let that go for now.
I didn't see any major questions come through.
I got one. Christy,
Just one there.
what do you got?
Well, can you tell us who some of the candidates are that you're targeting?
So
Just
right
came
now,
in.
if you look at the next events, the next two events cover who we're targeting. So the event with Simon Rosenberg, you can go on his website. You will see the 4 candidates that he is using as part of the what he's calling winning the House. So he has 4 candidates. I think they're all women. I'm just remembering this now. They are all candidates who I would have considered. And the fact that he's considering them, I go, they must be really good because he's considering them. When you come, you'll be able to make a donation, or your friends will, that night, to all 4, which is the whole project through Act Blue. All of that will explain that night. Or you can contribute to just one of those candidates. So that'll take care of the event we're doing in March. For the event we're doing in May, for that event, the States Project, the money goes to the organization called the States Project. I will talk some other night about the States Project, because they are an amazing organization who we've worked with for years. But they don't have a specific congressional candidate. But the way they work supports a lot of congressional candidates within the state they're working in.
We have 3 sponsors so far, Paul, who've just signed on.
That's great. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Somebody asked, just me in chat, they might have put my phone number. I'm happy to give that out if you want to do that.
I can put that in, but there is one question here. The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, it's an organization. So there's so many. Let me just say this. Right now, please, for those of you who are new or have been here, I could list 20 really great organizations, right? That, yes, support them. If you're interested in, like, my opinion about some of them, I'm more familiar with candidates than organizations. I have a couple of organizations I know really well: Movement Voter Project, the States Project, Bucks County Democrats. Those 3 I know so well. I support them. If it's an organization, I can't really speak. I'm not even. I'm just an idiot, not a savant on organizations. On individual candidates, I feel a lot more like most candidates I could give you some advice on.
I think that's it.
That's everything I see.
And more
Yeah.
sponsors, more.
Great, more sponsors.
Don't lose the chat. Don't lose
But
the
really,
chat.
Yeah.
guys, if your third cousin who is married to your ex-brother-in-law and happens to know somebody who would be a good headliner, please, please, please. What I find, all I need is to get my foot in the door. If I can get their email and say, would you like to, we will raise $50,000 for this candidate. I'm telling you, I will get a response. But if I don't have the foot in the door, there's no way for me to get, for example, I want Heather Cox Richardson on because I just adore her. I love her. I want to be on with her. I want to tell my kids I went on with her. I want to get to ask her a question, get her virtual autograph, right? And she's also just amazing. But I have no way of contacting her. So when I went to her website and tried to find it, there's no response because she's probably getting 30,000 emails and they're screened by, graduate students who she's now got working for her. So if you have that kind of connection, really would be very, very helpful to us. Well, that may be it. I mean, I think I went way over. Yep. So
One good idea, a musician that's canceled playing at the Kennedy Center.
Andy Borowitz.
You ready for closing music?
This is a piece. We're playing it again because we've all just loved it. We played it I think the last meeting we had. It's a version of Stand By Me. And so guys, we'll all stand by each other. And thank you so much.
Okay, and
Very
don't forget
rough.
to stop the recording, Michael, and don't forget to